back with Rapheal Davis. We talked a little bit about Indiana and kind of where they've been to this point. Seems to me this is one of those games where you can get right. Elon is really struggling this year, have not beaten a Division I team. What do you want to see from Indiana in this game this evening?
I want to see fluidity in their offense, especially their half-court offense. Because you know Elon, you throw the ball into TJD, they're going to trap, they're going to send some type of post-double. I mean, those kickouts to Cobb, Galloway, Tamar Bates, seeing what they do off of them. Is it just a catch and shoot every time? Or is it a catch, make a play for someone else, getting into the lane? I'm really looking forward to see how involved Race Thompson is. The last two, he's really picked up his energy, averaging around 14 and 7. He can be a big presence for this Indiana team on the floor and in the locker room. And then also for TJD, just to dominate. I just want TJD to have a performance where he just dominates the entire game, offensively and defensively. It's not about how many points he scores or anything like that, but just the presence of him being on the floor and just dominating the game will be big for him.
Elon, coached by Billy Taylor, the longtime Iowa assistant, a really good X&O coach, as anyone in the Big Ten knows. And he obviously will know a lot about this Indiana team, having coached against them. So they'll have a good game plan for him. But the fact of the matter is, again, Elon, just personnel-wise, a team in transition, Taylor's first year, kind of trying to figure it out. What's the mentality when you go into a game where you know you've got superior talent from a player's point of view?
Well, you know you got to play the game the right way, because even if you do win, but you don't win the way your coach wants to win, that practice the next day is going to be as if you lost. So you know you want to go in and don't play the score, don't play the opponent's jersey, just play the game. You want to shoot good shots, take care of the basketball. You know Coach Woodson was harping on it all week long. 23 turnovers at Kansas, which led to 28 points for Kansas. That's the game. If you turn the ball over that many times, it takes away opportunities for you to score the ball. So turnovers is going to be a big key. Can they win the paint, but can they dominate the paint will be a big one. And can they get out in transition? I think Hood Schifino is a guy that is going to excel in transition, playing up and down. As a freshman, it's tough to come in and lead a team in a half-court offense right away if you're the guy. Bruce Thornton can do it at Ohio State, but he has sense of ball, he has swing, he has key. But I would like to see Hood Schifino be able to get out and break some a little bit too.
Would like to see him see the ball go in the basket a little bit too, right? Just 2 of 11 from the field in that game against Kansas. Does so many other things well, rebounds incredibly well for a guard and can really dish it out. But that's the one component where maybe you'd like to see on a more consistent basis him putting the ball in the hoop. So that is the first game of our doubleheader. What do you make of Northwestern, fresh off a 38-point win over DePaul? They have UIC tonight. It does feel like Northwestern has found an identity on the defensive end this year, an identity I know that you can respect as a defensive player. What's going on there?
I mean, I look at this Northwestern team, and I take a quote from Coach Shrewsbury at Penn State. They are gritty, and they are not pretty. They are ugly at times on offense, but they get the job done defensively. They're hard-nosed. They want to fight. They want to lock up. And it's beautiful to watch them play defense. The number 1 scoring defense in the conference, the number 2 percentage defense in the conference. We think about how teams shoot the ball against them or how many field goals you can get up against them. They are stifling defensively. I like how they're built. Chase Audige had a fantastic game against DePaul, 28 points. 5 steals, doing it on both ends. He's quietly turning himself into one of the better two-way players in the conference. He's doing it with his defense, and offensively, he just kept it simple. When he was open, shot the ball. When he wasn't, drove the ball, made a play for someone else, only 1 turnover. He's going to be key to them offensively. And so will Boo Buie. 5 turnovers against DePaul, but he's been better. I think that second half he had against DePaul was really good. Those 2 guys are going to take this team where they want to go.
We talked a lot in the past couple of years about decision-making for them at the guard spot. It feels like Audige has just made a huge leap there on the offensive end. Buie, every once in a while, still takes some suspect shots. I think, part of the issue is there aren't many guys who can score on the team, and so perhaps he feels a little bit of pressure there. But it does feel like Audige, offensively, is a totally different player, and as you say, defensively is really good. I mean, some of these numbers are really stunning. Their opponents are shooting 37% from 2-point range.
Crazy.
From 2-point range.
Crazy.
That is the best in the nation. They're blocking 18% of their opponent's shots.
And you think about it, they don't necessarily have a traditional big shot blocker. They have Nixon down inside, just a big body, a big bruiser. And I love how they use him. He knows what he's down there to do. He has 5 fouls. He may use them all. He may knock some heads off, but he's down to rebound, to defend. And they have a team where everyone knows their role defensively. They're on a string around the perimeter. But I think it starts with Chase Aldige, like you said. His commitment to be better, it feels like it's bled in everybody else.
And give a lot of credit to Chris Collins for seeing that this had to be the identity of the team and then going out and identifying a great assistant, Chris Lowry, who is incredibly well respected. As you know, former SIU coach, spent a lot of time with Bruce Weber, a really good defensive mind as well, and they've totally turned it around. UIC, by the way, coached by Luke Yaklich, the former assistant at the University of Michigan to John Beeline, so he will certainly understand Northwestern and what they want to do X and O-wise quite well. Nebraska plays tonight as well. They're facing Queens University of Charlotte. This is a team that's transitioning to Division I. They have actually beaten some pretty good teams. They beat Marshall in their opener. Marshall is a top 100 Ken Palm team. They have a win over High Point as well. They've beaten a couple of MAC teams. So this won't necessarily be a game where Nebraska could come in and just roll out the balls and get an easy win. We were really effusively praising Nebraska a week and a half or so ago, and they won 3 straight games against power conference teams, went into Creighton and got a win. It has fallen off a little bit here, although certainly they gave Purdue absolutely everything they can handle. But what do you make of where the Huskers are?
They have to play this game because if they don't come out and attack from the beginning, they could find themselves down early. And Nebraska's not a team that if you get them down, they don't necessarily have the fire pack to come back. So they got to come out aggressive, attack from the start. I look at a guy like Greasel. He's got to continue it on. He got a little ill, got a little sick, energy-wise, wasn't there even in that Purdue game. You could see he just exhausted the tank. So he's going to have to be better if he's feeling healthier. You got Derek Walker, one of the better bigs in the conference. I really like how he plays the game, plays it within himself, scores around the rim with finesse, can rebound the basketball, and then it's just a voice on the team. But guys like Tomi Naga, Wilcher, all of those guys, they have to be able to make shots. This Nebraska team reminds me a lot of some of my early Purdue teams. We ranked bottom of the Big Ten. We finished bottom of the Big Ten. But every single game, it's a fight. Even though you finish bottom of the Big Ten, you could lose every game if you don't go out there and fight. So go out there and fight, have a will, and play Nebraska-style basketball. I think they can come away with it.
It is interesting, some of these teams who have developed this defensive identity. I would put Nebraska in that group. Rutgers has been that way for quite some time. They are struggling a little more on the offensive end. They did a year ago. We just talked about Northwestern. This was how Penn State built it a year ago. Now it feels like they're a little bit better defensively. But it does, if you can get buy-in on the defensive end of the court, I mean, obviously you need a certain level of acumen, athleticism, and whatnot. But it does feel like a lot of that is about want to. And it's really encouraging to see Fred Hoiberg and Chris Collins. And again, it's been Steve Pikiell's identity for a while here. But to get those guys, and I mean, Purdue for sure, right? I mean, way better.
Yeah, I mean, even you look back when I played, my sophomore year, we finished last place in the Big Ten. One of our coaches after the season looked at me and called me the worst defender he's ever recruited to Purdue. And it could have hurt my feelings, or I could have took it the right way and went in the gym and worked. And that next year, I become Defensive Player of the Year. A.J. Hammond is obviously one of the better shot blockers in the country. John Nocte is one of the better guard defenders. We go from last place in the Big Ten to third in the Big Ten, playing with the bye on the third day of the Big Ten tournament. So it definitely starts with your defense, and then once that is set, everybody believes in it. You get some guys to fit your offensive schemes and your systems. They come in expected to play defense, and then you just off to the races.
Yeah, absolutely. Just don't think about Nebraska in those terms, for they've really changed the way they play. They've slowed it down, taken much better shots this year. And now just need to see a few more of them go in, and they will start that process, they hope, tonight. Our big stat breaking down the women's hoops rankings. They are topped by South Carolina and Stanford, but look after that. It is Ohio State at 3, Indiana at 4. This is the first time since 1994 the Big Ten has had multiple teams in the top 4 in consecutive weeks. Iowa, Maryland, Michigan, all also ranked in the top 20. Megan McEwen is here. As promised, she's going to help us dive into some of these teams. Let's start with Ohio State. I mean, they are an incredibly fun team to watch. They average about 90 points per game. Give people a sense of what's going on with this team, even with one really key injury, still playing incredibly well.
Without star guard J.C. Sheldon, Ohio State is still one of the scariest teams in the country because they do two things well. They score the ball, averaging 90 points a game. That ranks first in the Big Ten, fourth in the nation. And then they're turning teams over, forcing 27 turnovers a game. That's third in the nation. So not only are they able to play at a really fast-paced scoring, they're turning it over so much that they're able to get a lot of easy points off those turnovers. And no one has really been able to stay composed enough against them so far to counter that by any means and slow down the pace of play.
I mean, their turnover margin is plus 13.5. That is such an I did a double take when I saw that number. That is a staggering number.
It's insane because there are so many teams that can score in the country. Look at a team like Iowa, who's averaging 85 points a game. Yeah. But Ohio State's playing excellent defense as well. So when you can play at a fast pace but also commit to the defensive side of the ball, that's why Ohio State's been so successful so far this year.
So this ranking, their best since 2010. They have an interesting game tonight against the University of South Florida in San Diego. They're part of a tournament. South Florida is pretty good.
It's actually really
beaten Ohio State the last two times they played. Give us a sense for this matchup tonight.
South Florida is a team that went to the NCAA tournament a season ago, and it's a team that has some size on the interior that can kind of bang with Rebecca Mikula-Shakova. This game's going to come down to, can South Florida slow down Ohio State? That's going to be the key to beating the Buckeyes this year, if anyone can do it. Slowing them down and making them grind it out in the half court offensively. South Florida has size. They have some players that can shoot the ball well from beyond the arc. This is actually going to be a better game than some people might realize. I'm excited to watch it tonight.
Yeah, you wouldn't think on paper if you're not a student of women's basketball, but as you say, it's been a really good South Florida program.
And the American Conference is fantastic as well, and they've had some really good teams throughout the course of the last couple of years. A two-bid NCAA tournament team for women's hoops last season.
Would get Arkansas or Oregon next, depending on how the game goes today. Indiana's still unbeaten. They beat Morehead State over the weekend, but only by 63. So that one was...
That's it.
That was
only 63.
Pretty tight. They have the marquee win over North Carolina. Terry Morin's really got this team going here. Again, just kind of give us a sense, for those who haven't been dialed in, what's going on with the Hoosiers.
What's crazy about both Ohio State and Indiana is both teams are without their star guard. Indiana's without star guard Grace Berger, who's been out for a month, but it hasn't mattered because the Hoosiers still have Mackenzie Holmes, who has been fantastic on the interior, averaging almost 20 points a game, and she's so efficient down low. But for the first time in a long time, Indiana has three-point shooting. Chloe Moore-McNeil has come in with the ability to shoot more than 40% from three. Add in the transfer Sydney Parrish and Sarah Scalia, who both have the ability to knock it down. When you have a player like Mackenzie Holmes, who takes up so much attention on the interior, now defenses are collapsing and three-point shooting's available. Indiana's averaging 84 points a game. That's nearly 13 more than last year. This Hoosiers team is so disciplined, especially on the offensive side of the ball. There's going to be a lot of teams that they're going to just knock out of the park because nobody can keep up with that efficiency.
Leading the Big Ten in assist-to-turnover ratio, leading the Big Ten in field goal percentage as well. They've got Butler coming up tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's a team that played a really good Illinois team tight, so this won't necessarily be an easy game for the Hoosiers.
Not necessarily. I still think that there's no one on Butler that has the ability to match Mackenzie Holmes in the paint size-wise. But that being said, I mean, this Butler team's much improved. They have a great coach in Austin Parkinson, who's in from IUPUI, who actually played at Purdue, former Purdue basketball player.
Boilermaker.
And he's done a fantastic job taking over this Butler team so far. They're much more competitive this year, not where they're going to be by the time he's done with them. But Indiana should still win this one by double digits pretty easily.
Last non-conference game there for IU. Everyone knows about Caitlin Clark and Iowa. They have played a really tough schedule, have a few stumbles, but got the great win over Iowa State. How do you assess where the Hawkeyes are at this point?
Iowa's always going to be hard to guard because Caitlin Clark is the best player in the country. The best guard for sure, arguably the best player. She's third in the NCAA with 28 points a game. She's averaging 7 assists per game. Then you add in the fact that Monica Sinano is one of the most efficient post players in the country as well. Iowa's always going to be able to score the ball. But because of the style of play that Iowa plays at, so fast-paced, it allows opponents to have more possessions, therefore they can score more points. And Lisa Bluter's spoken to the style of play, not making them necessarily the most efficient defensive team. But in order for Iowa Iowa to make a deep run in the Big Ten, they have to lock in to that defensive side of the ball. And we've seen spurts of it so far this season. They held Iowa State to under 60 points a game. Iowa State is one of the best scoring teams in the country. They did it again with Minnesota, holding them to only 64 points. So we've seen spurts of that defensive ability, but that's going to have to be a consistent piece for Iowa to win the Big Ten this year.
They have Dartmouth coming up. Now, I've talked up Butler, and I've talked up USF. It feels like Dartmouth is a game Iowa should win.
Yeah, that's right? Yeah, you said it right there. This should be a pretty easy game from them.
I've never lost to an Ivy. Dartmouth comes in at 2-10. Maryland, we've talked a lot about roster turnover. It feels to me like it's worked out pretty well. 3 wins over top 20 teams so far. Last time out was their first ever win over UConn. How is this all fitting together so well here for Maryland?
Maryland is one of the most interesting teams in the conference to me because from a talent standpoint, they can beat anybody in the country. But because there's only 3 players from last year's roster that returned this season that has impactful minutes under Brenda Freeze, they're still a beatable team. Purdue gave them a run for their money in that game. Only a 3-point win. Cheyenne Sellers hit a buzzer beater to win it for Maryland. But then they turn around and play fantastic against UConn and pick up that huge win at home. So Maryland, Diamond Miller, look, is a first-round draft pick in the WNBA. She's pro-ready with her body. She can score at 3 levels, averaging 18 points a game. There's not a lot of teams that have an answer guarding her. But this Maryland team just needs to still figure out how to play together because there are so many new pieces added into the mix.
It is interesting. I mean, lost resoundingly to Nebraska. Just got absolutely hammered. So, as you say, you beat UConn, you lose to Nebraska, you play, I mean, they're just trying to fit it together. And I think this is the challenge, particularly in the transfer portal era. And we've seen it across all levels of women's and men's, and we see it in football of kind of how do these pieces fit together. They get IPFW tomorrow, which is an interesting game because Cheyenne Sellers' sister plays for IPFW.
Cheyenne Sellers' sister, Shayla Sellers, averages 11 a game, and that's the reason why Maryland, I love when coaches do that. They have players on their team, they say, we're going to go play at IPFW and let the sisters play against one another. Another game that Maryland should be able to handle pretty easily. Just not enough size and physicality that IPFW has to match Maryland.
And then 9 days off after that.
Much needed for everybody.
Yes, I would say so. Kim Barnes-Arico really has it going again for Michigan. Post Naz Hillman, they are still really good. Bring us up to date on the 10-1 Wolverines.
Michigan has been fantastic on the defensive side of the ball. They're first in the Big Ten in scoring defense. I believe around 56 points a game they're giving up to opponents. But what I've been so impressed with is the play of forward Emily Kaiser. She was a great 1-2 punch with Naz Hillman a season ago. But now she's come in averaging 18 points a game and has become really on her own dangerous in the post. Add in the fact that you have someone like Rapheal who can score at multiple levels. Maddie Nolan can shoot the ball fantastic from beyond the arc, and Leah Brown continues to be a top scorer in this league. So Michigan has a core back that can all score. And then Greta Kampschrader has been a fantastic addition in the transfer portal, who's also been able to come in and provide scoring and valuable experience minutes at the Power 5 level. She came from Oregon State. 10
wins, as we said, 9 of them by double digits. And as you talked about, really good defensively. A big one tonight, the Jumpman Invitational. This is pretty cool because we get it on the women's side and then get it on the men's side as well. Michigan and North Carolina. What do you make of this matchup?
This is going to be great. Look, North Carolina is one of the best teams in the country. Indiana took care of them earlier this year in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. Michigan, I think, matches up relatively well against them. North Carolina actually has one of my favorite players in the country, forward Alyssa Usby, who just has a fantastic motor. She plays with a high level of physicality that I think could be an interesting matchup when it comes to the front court. North Carolina also has a great guard in Deja Kelly, who was one of the top scorers in the ACC a season ago. I imagine Layla Filia will be matched up against Deja Kelly, so that could be a really fun matchup to keep an eye on. This is going to be a close game. I think Michigan can come out if they stay disciplined defensively because Carolina has the ability to get a little crazy at times, but it's going to be a close one in Charlotte.
This will be a really good gauge, too, because the one thing you can say, Michigan did beat Baylor, but other than that, this is just the second-ranked opponent. So as you really try to gauge, hey, where do they truly stand, this is a good way to get you a barometer.
Especially because we're about to go into Christmas now, too. And so, this is kind of your last ability to assess your team before you get into Big Ten play. Because, look, Michigan's first Big Ten game after the after Christmas rather, is Ohio State. So this will be a fantastic way to kind of prep for the third-ranked Buckeyes coming your way on 31st.
Are you saying that one might be challenging?
And maybe, could be.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Last non-conference game, as you say, for Michigan, and there is a significant break for a lot of these teams here coming up. But some fun basketball this week. Always fun to get caught up.
Always great.
Just get a sense of where things stand in women's hoops and what's shaping up to be a really good year.
Once again, parity at a all-time high.
Yeah, pretty cool. With some great strength at the top. Maybe we'll get a Final Four team.
Ooh, that'd be fun. Hey.
Jinx it. Our big stat, looking at the Big Ten's top defenders. Trace Jackson-Davis is the top shot blocker in the conference. He is 10th in the nation in that category. Northwestern's Chase Audige, we talked about him a little while ago. He tops the conference in steals. That is actually the top mark among all power conference players. Audige, nearly 3 steals per game. You see Cam Spencer, the transfer not far behind him from Rutgers. Rapheal, former Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, as we mentioned, so you are uniquely qualified, I think, to rank the top 5 defenders in the Big Ten. Let's go through them. Where would you start with number 5?
I would start with Steph Lundy, and this is a guy, you can move him up higher in the list as the season goes on. I look back to last year when he had games against the best players in the conference. You think Jay Nivey, Johnny Davis, Ron Harper Jr., Keegan Murray. Not only did he hold them under their scoring averages, but he held them all under their scoring field goal percentages. His numbers don't really blow you away as far as steals or blocks, but he's long, he's athletic, he has a tough will and a demeanor about him, and he follows a scouting report to a T. A guy that watches a lot of films, finds tendencies, and tries to take things away from you.
Did not make the all-defensive team last year.
Oh, he got robbed.
And it really feels like he took it personally, didn't he?
He took it personally. I took it personally for him. I'm still at bat for my guy.
Rapheal wakes up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night and says, how in the world did Steph Lundy
all the time?
All-defensive team last year. I'm sure he appreciates it. You taking it personally for him. Who is number 4 after Seth?
TJD. And TJD is another guy. You can move him up along as the season goes, but right now, his ability to block shots at the rim, 9 blocks against a great Kansas team. He affects the game at that level. He can start to break for you. He rebounds the basketball. He can guard pick and roll offenses. He can switch on guards at times. He's a guy that can do everything. He can guard every position on the floor defensively. It's about doing it every single game. Right now, over the last 4 games, he's averaging around 5 blocks, which is big time. You're going to need him to stay this catalyst on the defensive end and add some offense to keep going.
That number you threw out there, 9 blocks against Kansas, just to put that in perspective, against a top 10 team, there's only been 1 player in the last 20 years in college basketball who had more blocks against an AP top 10 team than TJD had against Kansas. That's an incredible
that's crazy.
Number, right?
Yeah.
They still lost the game, unfortunately, and lost it by a significant margin. But, man, he can change games, no question about it. Who's number 3?
I go Chase Audige, a guy that's really just committed to defending at the highest level, playing for one of the better defenses in the conference. He anchors that defense. 5 steals in his last game, leading the Big Ten in steals around 3 per game. He's a pest on the ball. He takes a lot of gambles guarding the basketball, which means he real reach in there sometimes, pick up a foul, but sometimes he reaches in there and he gets it. He goes for a touchdown to go score a fast break layup. He's tough-nosed. He's strong-bodied. He can push some little guards around. But his commitment to defending this year has been special. I thought he was a good defender last year, but I really think he's taking it to another level.
It's pretty interesting, too, to hear Chris Collins he spent a significant amount of time talking about Chase Audige in the post-game news conference after DePaul. And Audige had an unbelievable offensive game at a career high in points. But he really went out of his way to say, it is about his defense and was really lobbying for him. And I do think that this is one of those areas, and we talked about this earlier as well with Seth Lundy. Micah Shrewsbury did the same thing last year. It feels like sometimes at defense, it's not as obvious, right, as a great offensive player, unless someone's a shot blocker or a steals guy, but just kind of a one-on-one, lock you down defender. It feels like sometimes coaches almost have to stump for their guys, and we saw Micah do it last year with Seth, and I think we're starting to see Collins do it a little bit this year with Audige as well. Who's number 2?
Caleb McConnell. reigning defensive player of the year in the conference, 6'6", 6'7" guard, can guard the 1 through the 4. He can guard some 5s in this league now. You think about Coleman Hawkins playing the 5. McConnell can check him all day, all night. But he's tough. He rebounds the ball. He's physical. He dives on the floor, gets steals, gets blocks. He does all the little things to anchor this best defense in the conference, which is Rutgers the last couple of years. He gets the job done at a high level. And what he does, his energy bleeds into everybody else. You start with McConnell, it goes to Paul McCahey, it goes to Morey, Mag, all of those different guys that's really picked up their effort on defense. But he brings that fear factor as well. When you're playing the Defensive Player of the Year, you know that going into the game. So guys already have a feeling about it, and he definitely just attacks every single time.
Team that is 4th in the nation in defensive efficiency. No doubt that is their identity. Who's number 1?
I'm going to big fella Zach Edey, and this may surprise some people, but his ability to change shots at the rim, he may not always get a block. He has 7 against Nebraska, which helped him get over the edge, but his ability to alter shots or change shots or him to put it in the back of your mind that it's a 7'4" guy down here that can move a little bit, that can jump. Guys don't want to drive in there as much and get their shot blocked. You know you got to go in there, either dunk on them or you're going to go get it blocked, and he really brings that. He's guarding better, which is why this Purdue team is guarding better. We talked earlier about his shot blocking ability, but not just his shot blocking ability, but the way to do it without fouling. I play with A.J. Hammonds, who is probably one of the better shot blockers ever to play in the Big Ten, but there'll be times where he go after it, he get a few fouls. He's going to have 4 or 5 games throughout the course of a month where he's in foul trouble. Zach Edey, 24 blocks, just 20 fouls, haven't really been in foul trouble this season. But just the determination to be better has been there. And then his ability to defensive rebounding. And rebounding doesn't necessarily come into play when you talk about defensive players of the year, but your team misses a shot, the best defense will get the rebound, not give up offensive rebounds. And Zach Edey averaging 14 rebounds a game, being one of the best rebounders in the country. He cleans up the glass, he alters shots at the rim, and he's starting to step up a little bit on ball screens.
Has a great shot, of course, to be the Big Ten Player of the Year as well. Big Ten Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year as a double. Juwan Johnson,
yep.
The last to do that in 2011. It's only been done 2 other times aside from that. D. Brown and then Gary Grant way back before you were even born. Quick trip around the Big Ten starts with football. Brett Bielema is sticking around in Champaign. Illinois announcing he has signed a new 6-year deal that will keep him at the helm of the program through the end of the 2028 season. Bielema has completely turned around the Illini in his 2 years. Got as high as number 14 in the nation this season. Boasts the country's top scoring defense. The agreement is still pending Board of Trustee approval. I like his chances there. Women's Basketball Weekly Awards. Nebraska forward Alexis Markowski, Big Ten Player of the Week for the first time in her career after recording her 5th double-double of the season in a win over Wyoming. Cody McMahon of Ohio State and Kayleen Smikle of Rutgers shared the honor for Freshman of the Week. And on the men's side, Philip Rabracha of Iowa, the Player of the Week, career-high 30 points against Southeast Missouri. Bryce Sensabaugh of Ohio State, the Freshman of the Week, 22 points, 8 boards in the loss to UNC. First career award for each of those 2. And really great to see Rabracha coming into his own. You mentioned him earlier, but it felt like last year maybe pressing a little bit too much by his own estimation, but this year really has found his place in that offense.
You heard Coach speak about it in the presser. He's a thinker. He's hard on himself. He wants to be good. You think about before coming to Iowa at North Dakota, he's a guy that averaged 17 and 8 rebounds. So he was their guy. So he had to come to Iowa, learn how to be just a piece of a team, had to play behind, well, not play behind, but play with the guys. Top 5 draft pick, Keegan Murray. This year, learning how to play with Patrick and Chris, just finding his role, but he's found it in a big way. 39-6 in their last game. They're going to need him to keep it going.
He is averaging nearly 21 points per game over the last 3 with Chris Murray out of there, and then Sensabaugh's been great.
Yeah,
everything he was billed to be.
Yeah, he was just born to score. He was born to score the basketball, born to shoot the basketball. He can shoot the 3. He can drive to the paint with that big body. He can post you up. We've seen against North Carolina being able to get to his spot and get to his pull-up. Bryce Sensabaugh was 100% born to score the basketball. He's shown it in a big way.
That was a pretty cool moment against North Carolina. Obviously, Carolina came down and ended up winning the game. But for a freshman to hit a shot like that in the Garden, that is big time indeed. That's it for us. Signing day tomorrow, plus some hoops talk. See you then.